Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me I have Mr. Ben Gioia. He's an amazing human being. I love how he empowers and helps other individuals share their message with the world. I just wanted to bring her on so that give you some food for thought for things that you could do outside of your busy day that might help make the world a better place through your experiences. So without further ado, Ben, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal story, how you got to be and do what you do, and what your passion is, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Doctor. How many days do we have for this?
Exactly, right?
Right? I always love and don't love that question because I'm like, I want to, which is a good reminder to have the things, the three things in place. Now, so thank you so much for having me here. So I love helping people write books. I've been a writer since I was 12 years old and publishing stuff since I was 13. And then lo and behold, 35 years later, I help people write books.
That's
um,
consistency for you right there.
Thank you. Thank you. The road to consistency was like, absolute
Oh.
spaghetti, but here we are. Um, yeah. In along that journey, just had some really powerful touchstones that helped bring me into this place. Like the first one was the orientation towards service that was always in my family, teachers and attorneys, like the good kind of attorneys, right? Doing a bunch of good in the world. And then I was doing peer counseling in high school and starting to study psychology, starting study creative writing and writing the whole time. And finally at some point after giving up on everything spiritual for a bunch of years, right, like doing the recovering Catholic thing, I was like, there's nothing. And then after a while I was like, oh, there's something. There is indeed something. And then I started paying attention to the fact that there's something. And in doing that, was unfortunately, not unfortunately, but just my own history, doing way too many drugs, being a mess with my money, and finding my way to a really low point in my life where I was like, what do I do? I'm at the low point, right? The only way is up. And I found my way back to India. And I'd been traveling to India before, and I finally went back, not like to party, but to actually get a clue, right?
Mm.
Or expand on the clue. And started meditating, and that kind of blew the lid off my head. Was a way to, you know, actually stop doing all of those wrong drugs and stuff and get on the path to being in service in a big way. I had somewhere in the midst of all of that craziness, I had traveled to South Africa for my first time and really understood directly for the first time like what it means to live in the third world, especially in a place of governmental and institutional oppression, for decades and decades and decades. And I went, oh, no matter what I'm doing for the rest of my life, like it has to be in not only in service, but for me, like epic service. Like how can I make a massive, massive positive impact? Um, and that's why I'm doing what I do.
That's awesome. Awesome. I appreciate it. I salute you for doing that.
Thank you.
So, a lot of our target audiences happen to be parents or serve parents or have parents or have children. But bottom line, what I'm trying to say is that they are somehow related to somebody else that either took care of them at a certain point or they're taking care of those people who can't take care of themselves. And I know that inevitably people kind of learn things along the way when they're going through these life experience and being responsible for another human being. So, or being the on the receiving end of it as well, people develop their story. So I wanted to kind of ask you, uh, is there a way for them to share this message? And is this something that you'd be passionate about to talk about?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, there is. There are many ways, and the one I would recommend is writing your book. Right? There is so much power, obviously, in the written word, so much power in storytelling. I mean, it's the oldest form of human connection, even before cave paintings. Right? Out around the fire, we're telling the story. If there was even fire at that point, right? Bunch of people being around cold, no fire, just a rock. Um, but but yeah, but telling your story through, or stories in a book. And for me, I encourage people, don't just tell your story, because if you just tell your story, a lot of times people are like, I don't want to hear your story. Just like stop talking, right? Because you're just like, they don't have the context. But
Mhm.
if you understand who you're telling the story to, i.e., who you're serving with your work, what they care about, how they speak, what's important to them, how you help them, and start connecting stories, stories to that, then it becomes relevant to them and impactful to them, and a hell of a good reason to capture your wisdom in a book.
That actually just made sense for me. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I remember when I was raising them, they were just really young, and you had to read stories to them. I remember reading some of those stories, and at the end of the book, I'm like, who wrote this? Because I just realized it didn't have context. It was just a story without a point. So now I get that.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah,
Got it. Awesome.
yeah.
So
Thank
that's
you.
important. And yes, these teaching points become important. I actually have been witness to see some amazing people over the years that, they have had struggles with their children, whether it was their health or learning or development, whatever it happened to be. And they share that experience sometimes in a children's book, sometimes in books for other parents so that they could see that they're not alone and stuff like that. So I really think that it's important. But then I also know that parents are busy, right? So how long does this process of creating a book take, Ben?
Yeah, thank you. So with me, it's a 6 week process. Even though
Wow.
this, yeah, even though my course is called 5 week book mastery, gives everybody a pause. It's a 6 week process, and the way I suggest it, to accommodate a busy schedule, is 5 sessions a week for about 66 minutes a pop. Right.
Okay.
So that's the at home time. And then there's class time, 2 hours a week. So you figure about 8 hours a week during that time.
Got it. So you
Yeah.
actually see, like you've been through this with other authors, so you
Yeah.
see this. What are
Yeah.
the typical challenges that stand in the way of somebody converting their story, their experience to something that actually would be in a book?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few different things. One of them is, their intention behind the book and what they want to do with it. Right. Because great to tell your story, great to put it in a book, and then also great to know what you want to do with that or not. Like, you don't have to do anything with it. Like, you could just publish your book for your family, but just to know, because the choices you make through the process will be informed by that goal,
Mm,
by that outcome, and it just makes everything a lot easier. Right. You can eliminate all sorts of stuff. So that's a big thing. Another one is really not understanding one's audience, one's ideal reader. And for what I teach, right, it's essentially your ideal client. So if you don't know who your people are, how to talk to them about what they care about in their language, yada yada yada, like that's a big sticking point. um and then for my methodology, the way I do it is very, very precise, if you haven't gotten that impression yet. So it's literally like, do this first, then do this, and then do this, and then do this,
nice.
but don't skip that. We share a lot of commonality, you and I and other people we know, in really focusing on implementation. Um so so a lot of a lot of my experts, right, who are creative people, really sometimes rail and struggle against the method. I'm like, do this exactly like this because it has to be like this so it
Mm.
works, and then they don't. I'm like, let me tell you something. Do this exactly like this, otherwise it doesn't work. Yeah.
So Ben, do you see it as fiction or nonfiction, or what do you typically work with as well?
Yeah. So for me, it's nonfiction books. That most of the time position people as the expert authority, in their market field or industry. Um, Sometimes some of my authors are writing memoirs,
Mm,
and that memoir is in conjunction with, or is the first step before, like, launching a podcast or doing, some other way to expand their message. So, similar, Dr. L, to what we were saying earlier on this conversation, make sure that they're not just telling these stories of their lives, but also really, including that little bit of wisdom and making it extra relevant for the reader.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually was just fortunate enough, literally last week, my son was doing a project about his heritage, where he came from and everything. And he
Wow.
actually asked me for our family tree. And I was very fortunate enough that my grandfather had actually gone through the process of
Nice.
creating a book that entailed his ancestry, a little biography of everybody, that he could go as far back as he could. So I was very happy to be able to pass that down to him literally last week, where he got to see that and incorporate that as part of his report for school on where
Wow.
he comes from and some of
Wow.
the stuff that his ancestors had done in the past. So
It's amazing.
so yeah, there's amazing knowledge and wealth that can be passed down in this fashion. So definitely I appreciate that and what you
Mm.
do.
Okay.
So all right, so we talked about some of these challenges. What are your tips as far as, other than make sure you follow the instructions?
Very ready.
What are your tips and
do,
tricks
do, do exactly
on
what I say.
making a book happen?
Yeah, thank you. So, excuse me, let me just take a sip of something.
Sure.
Thank
That's
you.
why this is a cafe, because we got to drink as
Exactly.
we talk, right?
I have my official coffee for the cafe. um, excuse me. So, the first thing to do is to commit to writing a book.
Mm,
Right, sometime in your life, like don't die without writing a book, because if you have an inkling or a little bit of a thought, it's probably worth it.
mm,
um from there, write a book about, don't writing a book is hard. Even, with a very direct step-by-step process like mine, like, it's hard. It stirs the pot, all sorts of emotions come up, and then
mm.
there's all the, human factors like time and schedules and children and things like that, and jobs. So when you do write it, try to clear the decks as much as you can, for that period of time, whether you're working with me or another coach. Like, take as much as you can off the calendar, and I know, again, there's life, there's kids, like, take care of your responsibilities, but, really clear the decks when you can, and focus on, like, stay connected to the love and the passion, and the heart that's, helping to bring this book and this message forward, because we do so much here because we need to, and this is functional, this is a great tool, and the more we can, bring and create and be just in this place of love. Down here, if you can't see it on video. um the more we are, the more we're able to be in a more calm and relaxed place,
Right.
and then therefore writing a book, having conversation, dealing with a meltdown of a child, whatever the thing is, just is easier, and, more effective, or, less crazy making, in the process.
That's that's true. I mean, I've noticed it even on the channel, that anytime that a speaker or even participants share their passion, what's in their heart, people connect with that. And although we typically think of books as, cerebral stuff, things that come from knowledge and brain and facts and cold, that kind of a thing, that is basically the tool to share what's in your heart, your passion, what has affected you emotionally. So I definitely can vouch for that, that it will be that much more effective when you speak from the heart, and then have your facts to supplement and give the backup, I guess, for why you were feeling the way you did, right?
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Right. Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what else? Tell us more. I love books. I am a best-selling author myself,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed the process. It's almost a process of self-discovery. So I definitely encourage this for all the audiences, not necessarily for other people. I mean, if you're service-oriented, yes, it's for other people. But I also can tell you that, as you embark on that journey, you become a different person too. So definitely.
You sure do. You sure do. And Alia or Dr. L, a quick story I want to share is I think you know this, but when I excuse me wrote my second book, which is called Influence with a Heart, how to be a better leader and communicator by using more empathy, story, and thought leadership. That was
Mm,
book number two. Um, the I knew I was going to write the book that year. It was 2016. I knew I was going to write the book. It wasn't on the calendar, but I knew it was going to happen. And then I rebranded my business. I used to be marketing with a heart for the first 5 years, and struggling, making almost no money, the whole deal. And then I rebranded, repositioned, um, and I just didn't want to be just the marketing guy, right?
right.
So I updated my LinkedIn profile. Like, I mean, just about maybe 4 words, it
Mm.
seems. Marketing with a heart, influence with a heart, right? Like a few other things. Somebody contacts me and they're like, hey, would you like to come do a 2-day training at Stanford University for
Oh,
visiting
wow.
business people? And I was like, yeah, I would. Thank you. So we sort out all the details, sign the contract, etc. And I said, I just docu-signed the contract. By the way, as an added value, I'm going to show up with 130 printed autographed copies of my book for everyone in the audience for free. And the event planner's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And they're going to love that. It makes us look good. You're welcome. You're welcome. Hang up the phone. And I went, I got to write a book right now.
Great. You created a deadline for yourself.
The event was 6.5 weeks away from when I hung up the phone. So somehow I wrote it, assembled it, got it produced within 3.5.
Wow.
Got it shipped to me like expedited extra. Like I think I gave away a cousin to get the shipping faster. I mean, the whole deal, right? And got it done, showed up with books. The event went really well. 1 year later, I was standing on stage in Sydney, Australia, in front of about 3 times as many people of that same company at their headquarters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Powerful. Powerful. So
Thank
there's
you.
proof it can be done and you can lead your legacy actually. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And I appreciate you. This came up for me before as you were talking about legacy. One of the things that I talk about in my book, um, kind of like I introduce in my books, I should say, I introduce like, here's the topic of the book and here's why it's important, yada, yada, yada. And then right in there, I talk about my core principles,
Mm,
like my 7 core principles, like I'm, no matter what I'm going to tell you in this book, like this is the orientation, like this is where I'm operating from, period.
right.
And one of my principles, it has a clever name and I can't think of it right now, but it's essentially, asking yourself the question, you know, is what I'm about to do, essentially do, say, think, create, whatever the case may be, how is that going to affect me? And how is that going to affect people 7 generations down the line?
Mm,
Right. So trying to use that as a barometer in the mix of all the stuff. And, as a way to really take my stand in the space of the book, going like, this is what I'm about. If you're in, like you're so in, if you're not, it's cool.
awesome.
um, but it really just, uh, it I think, we get so hooked in the immediate, right? Because that's very much what our culture is, at least in the United
Right.
States, the West, right?
Right.
It's a lot of immediacy. So then to start thinking like, what's that phrase, your future self will thank you,
Right.
right? Like when you don't eat that cake, that whole cake, your future self will thank you. So
Yeah.
that same kind of thing, like, write your book because your future self or your, great grandchildren's great grandchildren, will be able to love and benefit from that gift that you've shared with them.
I remember a past mentor of mine always reminded me that you never know what you might do or say today might affect the lives of millions tomorrow. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. I like that one.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So Ben, how can people find out more about you and your program, your company, and all the different wonderful things that you do?
Thank you so much. So there's information in the chat. Easiest thing, my event, my 3-day event, which is a wonderful way to get whole understanding of how to publish, position, and profit from your book is literally called Publish, Position, and Profit Master Plan. So you can check it out at publishpositionandprofit.com to see when the next event is coming. If you want to connect with me directly, an easy way to just chat with me, influencewithaheart.com/chat, influencewithaheart.com/chat. And if you have questions about writing your book with me during my 6-week course, that's a great way to talk about that, because I do that. I have folks writing their books with me 3 times a year, so we can talk about when the next available slots are.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I love the idea of not only sharing your message with the world, but also being able to monetize from your experiences and make the world a better place all at the same time. It's like a win-win-win situation.
It really is,
So
yeah.
definitely love that whole concept. So thank you. I will make sure that I can put all of the chats and all the links and stuff in the description box. So
Thank you.
guys, go ahead and make sure you check it. Take Ben up on that offer and check him out. And also, if you haven't already done so, click subscribe on the button so that you can get every interview and every conversation that we have here on the cafe as well. And we look forward to having you in the future as well, Ben, and seeing you guys in the future on our channel as well. Any final words of wisdom before we part?
Thank you. Just, an invitation to everybody who's watching, listening, etc. You're here, you're here for a reason, and you have a chance to do all sorts of great things with that. And one of them is writing a book. If it's not writing a book, do something else great with what you're doing while you're here. And for as long as you're alive and walking around, there's a chance that you can be doing something great, even if it's just affecting one person at a time.
Well said. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you, Ben. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
We'll see you around. Cheers.